KOTOR is one of my favorite death metal bands. I mean, their rhythm is incredible. If you want to talk just straight death metal, Deicide, I mean, Legion, not so much for the subject matter, but just for the vocals. He kind of revolutionized going, from the blunt, growly thing into the high, black metal kind of, screechy. Glenn Benton was definitely a pioneer of that sound. He was a little obsessed with the dark things, but hey, if you name your band Deicide, you better have something to stand by, right?
Might as well back it up.
Yeah. There's so many bands that I hear now that, because touring with Morbid Angel, we saw them all. We literally, Slipknot, or a form of Slipknot opened up for Morbid Angel in Iowa when we played there, and they didn't wear masks, and we had no idea it was Corey Taylor. We didn't know that they were going to be as big as they were. This was like 95 or 96, and they were a good death metal band, I don't think they were called Slipknot, and if they were, they weren't really well known, so nobody thought about them. But then we went back a couple of years later, and they were in the arenas where Morbid Angel had, we were in smaller clubs, than they had been the year before. So you hear bands like Morbid Angel, Cannibal Corpse, all those original bands that came out at that time, even Venom, going way, way back, which you don't really consider more black metal. You hear that stuff on a lot of the newer metal, Five Finger Death Punch, Lamb of God, all that, their changes, the way that they attack the vocals, it's like listening to, Deicide or something like that, just more modernized and with slicker production and better arrangements,
Definitely. You mentioned Cannibal Corpse. That is like one of my favorite death metal bands. Have you ever seen them live?
The bass player, Alex Webster, was my roommate in Tampa.
Are you serious?
Yeah, we at one point we were the home for Wayward Rock Stars.
Wow.
And it wasn't me; it was my guitar player. His family owned a flat in Ybor City, which was kind of like the party part. Well, it is now anyway. Well, it was. But at the time, it was just kind of a urban decay area, and his family was Cuban, and they had this giant apartment, and we all lived there. And Alex Webster lived there, Eric Rattan from Hate Eternal and Morbid Angel lived there, and myself, and we all recorded a record together, and it was just punk rock, and we put a dirty sock on the mic, not only to make the sound better, but we thought that by smelling the dirty sock it would just make it that more aggressive, just everyone was you could really feel the disgust coming through the vocal take with that dirty sock.
I mean, you gotta do what you gotta do. Like, totally, I understand, like, the punk rock thing. You gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah, and Alex was great. The great quote that I remember him coming out with was, I was up all night, because we had played the night before, and I just, I had to work in the morning, and so I decided to stay up and cook a bunch of bacon. I made all this bacon, all this biscuit, and I just stunk up the house, and I had this like pile of bacon and all these biscuits, and Alex comes out, and he's kind of droll anyway, and he's very funny. He's like the straight kind of humor, or you don't know if he's being funny or he's being serious. And I have this bacon, and he just kind of looks at me with this, he looks at the bacon, and he's just like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, would you like some bacon? Bacon sausage? He's like, no, man, I don't think that would be a good idea. And then he left, but that was the kind of guy he was. And,
nice.
He was a maniac on stage as well as all of them, but, in person he was, he could have been a, insurance agent,
Mm-hmm.
And that was one thing I learned about death metal, was those guys are not the hype that they were made out to be, And my first tour was with Morbid, and I'll be honest, I was a little afraid. I looked at their albums and I saw this, occult imagery, and I called the manager up in New Jersey that put me on the tour, and I'm like, do these guys worship the devil? And his quote was, well, unless the devil is in the form of a bong and a PlayStation, you have nothing to worry about. And it was true. They didn't drink, which was awesome. I've been on some tours where they drank, and God, that was horrible. Because there's only one bathroom on the bus, and you can imagine.
Oh yeah.
The death metal guys were athletes. You know, they would get up every morning, jog 3 miles, take bee pollen. You know, they had to be the fastest. So to be able to do that, they had to live clean lives. You know, and it was a really good way to get jumped into touring, was to be around other straight edge people. You know, because at the time I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, I didn't do anything like that. And I think if I had like started my touring with Motley Crue, I would have probably retired, you know, pretty quickly, you know, just because of what I saw. But those guys were, you know, clean, straight, you know, narrow, and nobody. They were. It was for the, you know, to sell records. You know, like Cannibal Corpse didn't go out and, you know, murder people or think about it. They just sang about it,
Mm-hmm.
and had these unbelievable album covers that made them, you know, kings of their genre. But they were all very intelligent, all college educated, and athletes. You know.
And that's crazy because that's something that, you know, you look at them and you see what they do and the things they sing about, and you look at them and you're like, there's no way. But it's really cool to see that.
Yeah.
They're also like really humble dudes, I think. I can't really speak for all of them, but I can definitely say for Corpse Grinder, you know, lead singer of Cannibal Corpse, one of the most humble dudes ever. Like
he would come out and see my cover band.
Yeah,
you know?
would he really?
Yeah, he was one of our fans, and he didn't care if he heard the same Guns N' Roses song 1,000 times. He would just go out to drink and have a good time and be around people. So yeah, total humility.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Like that takes it to a whole nother level. I saw where he did an interview not too long ago, and his big thing on tour is he loves prize grabbers. And literally every time they stop somewhere on tour, he plays the hell out of prize grabbers. Every single time. He will leave with like a bunch of toys.
Yep.
And then I think he ends up donating most of them to like charities
Yep.
or any kind of organization that helps children. I'm like, you would never expect that from a dude who sings in a band called Cannibal Corpse.
Yeah, I went on the Cannibal Corpse bus, and that's the first thing I remember was they have what they call a junk bunk. And I open, you know, they're like, hey, just throw it in the junk bunk, whatever it was they wanted to throw back there. I open it up, and it's full of stuffed animals, and that's when I heard about his addiction, you know, and that, yeah, I mean, he is a total claw machine guy, and he does. He'll fill the entire junk bunk up and part of the bay with stuff, and he donates, you know, every year. So, yeah, it's one of those dichotomies in music, you know, death metal, you know.
Definitely. It's one of the cool things I love, like, you know, I love the music, but at the same time, when you hear that from those people, I'm just like, that just makes it even much better to listen to.
Yeah.
So, another thing I was wanting to talk to you about, kind of straying away from death metal for a little bit, is when it comes down to straight up songwriting. We've got a lot of musicians that listen to the radio station, whether they be like singer-songwriters, guitarists, you name it. I mean, they listen to it. When it comes to like songwriting, what's kind of like the method you like to use? Do you have a certain, I don't want to say like habits or ritual, but is there something you like to do when it comes to songwriting?
Well, you know, I look at songwriting. And this goes way back. Harry Nilsson, you know, is the person that taught me how to write songs. He's a voice from way back, you know, and he died unfortunately in the early '80s. So not a lot of people know who he is. He wrote "You Put the Lime in the Coconut and Put It All Up."
Yes.
And he did "Everybody's Talking at Me, I Can't Hear a Word They're Saying."
So he's the guy that made the songs I can't stop listening to or get out of my head.
Right,
Okay.
right, yeah. He was a, you know, tremendous songwriter, tremendous singer, and one of the things that he said in an early interview, you know, because I followed him, you know, ritualistically when I was a kid. I mean, he was like, oh my God, wow. Was that like an artist, you start with a blank canvas. You never hit a song expecting it to be something. And I've been in groups of people, you know, and had, you know, songwriting sessions with people who are very formulaic, you know. And when they hear songs on the radio, especially nowadays, you know, with a lot of cookie cutter type bands that have intro, you know, solo, verse, bridge, chorus, you know, the mathematical equation. You get a lot of, and of course snap to a grid, you know, you have to play it to a click track. The best way to write a song is just on an acoustic guitar, you know, and don't snap to a grid. Don't expect your song to be something right away. Go through the birthing process and start with a blank canvas, you know, and try something and record it. If it doesn't sound good, then try something else. But out of what didn't sound good, you may get 20% of something that sounds really cool. Keep that, scrap the rest, and it's like a building block.